Government in talks with mainland to open up live cattle supply trade. Hong Kong may be under stormy weather on July 1st. And Snowden's father says his son may return to the US on certain conditions.
Hello and a very good evening. Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man says the government wants to open up the live cattle supply trade in a bid to lower beef prices. But one expert warned that even if this happens, there could be a lack of interest from those in the industry. Evelyn Leung explains why.
The price of fresh beef keeps on going up here in Hong Kong. Just last year, the beef prices went up 6 times. Right now, a catty of standard beef costs $100. Today, Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man once again acknowledged the problem of pricey beef and stressed the government is making effort to find a solution. The government is discussing with mainland authorities about opening up the trade in live cattle to competition in an attempt to lower prices, he said. But Ko warned this will take time, as details such as the quality of other suppliers has to be assessed before they can enter the trade. And even if the government does open up the live cattle market, some warned that there could be a lack of interest from distributors to enter the business. This representative of the Hong Kong Fresh Meat Alliance said the demand for beef has dropped because of the high prices. If other distributors want to enter the market, they may find it hard to get supplies from the mainland, he explained. Evelyn Leung, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Observatory is warning that a tropical storm may pose a threat to Hong Kong on July 1st, but the situation is still subject to change. Tropical storm Rumbia is centered around 390 kilometers southeast of Manila this evening and is forecast to move at about 25 kilometers per hour across the Philippines. The director of the observatory, Shun Chi-ming, said according to the latest data, Rumbia is likely to come close to Hong Kong on July 1st. But he added that may change if the winds weaken after crossing landmass over Luzon. He said if people are lucky, the storm will weaken to bring just light rain and provide some relief from the heat. A very hot weather warning was issued today as a subtropical ridge dominating the area brought fine but sweltering weather to the region. The father of whistleblower Edward Snowden said his son may return to the United States if he's given reassurance of his constitutional rights. Lonnie Snowden acknowledged that his son may have broken the law, but doesn't think he committed treason. Alan Booknear reports.
Edward Snowden, a former systems analyst on contract with the National Security Agency, is wanted in the U.S. on espionage and theft charges after leaking details of government surveillance programs. His father, who says he hasn't had contact with his son since April, wrote a letter to U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder saying he's reasonably certain the younger Snowden would return if the Justice Department promises not to hold him before trial or enforce a gag order.
At this point, I don't feel that he's committed treason. He has, in fact, broken U.S. law in the sense that he has released classified information, and if folks want to classify him as a traitor, in fact, he has betrayed his government. But I don't believe that he's betrayed the people of the United States.
Lonnie Snowden says he's concerned that his son is being manipulated by others, particularly by WikiLeaks. Snowden is still believed to be in the transit terminal of a Moscow airport. Meanwhile, Ecuadorian officials say Russian authorities have stymied the country's efforts to have Snowden flown out of Moscow. Snowden has indicated he wants to seek asylum in Ecuador. The Ecuadorian accounts further complicate the already murky understanding of Snowden's status. Alan Booknear, TVB News.
The United States has warned U.S. nationals not to travel to Egypt after an American was killed in overnight clashes in the country. Tens of thousands of supporters and opponents of Egypt's President Mohamed Morsi rallied in a number of cities ahead of tomorrow's demonstrations, which could see millions take to the streets. The build-up to the anniversary of Mohamed Morsi's inauguration as Egyptian president was bound to be a time of renewed tensions. Sure enough, clashes erupted in Egypt yesterday between opponents of the Islamist president and his supporters. Tens of thousands from both sides of the political divide rallied in the capital city Cairo and in the second largest city of Alexandria, where much of the violence happened. There were dozens of casualties, including several deaths. One of those killed was an American citizen, a college student who was reportedly interning at a US non-profit organization in the field of education. The violence also saw damage to property, with officials reporting that several offices belonging to Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood were torched by protesters. Pro- and anti-government demonstrators have been putting on a show of strength before tomorrow's nationwide rallies to mark the first anniversary of Morsi's coming to power. The opposition says tomorrow's rallies will bring millions onto the streets in a bid to force Morsi to step down. Morsi's opponents say the country is fed up with Islamist misrule that has left the economy floundering and security in shambles. They say they have collected 15 million signatures, some 2 million more than the number of voters who elected Morsi, calling for him to resign. But others appear to be hedging their bets, with flights out of Egypt fully booked, as Egyptians and foreign nationals alike leave the country just in case the demonstrations spiral out of control. Given that this week's violence has already claimed the life of an American, the US State Department has warned its nationals not to travel to Egypt unless absolutely necessary, while telling non-essential diplomatic staff to leave. It's also warned Americans already in Egypt to remain alert. Supporters and opponents of Morsi have been skirmishing throughout the week, with sporadic violence reported in cities across the country.
And staying on the African continent, the ailing former South African president and anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela is reportedly doing better. Mandela's health has been the subject of national and global attention ever since the 94-year-old was rushed to hospital nearly 3 weeks ago. Earlier this week, the South African government said Mandela's condition had turned critical. But current President Jacob Zuma and Mandela's former wife Winnie said the elder statesman had improved. Meanwhile, the White House said today US President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle would meet with Mandela's family, but they will not visit the hospital where Mandela is being treated. Obama is in South Africa on the second leg of his three-nation tour of the African continent. Well, South Korean President Park Geun-hye says she wants to build a new type of relationship with North Korea. Speaking to students at Beijing's Tsinghua University today, Park began her speech with a few lines in Putonghua, quoting a few lines from an ancient Chinese proverb. She then turned to the main part of her speech, which focused on reducing tensions on the Korean peninsula. She said that included resolving the ongoing dispute over Pyongyang's nuclear program. The South Korean leader hopes the North will turn a corner and become a responsible member of the international community. Park said Beijing had a key part to play in ensuring peace on the Korean peninsula, and a peaceful region would boost China's prosperity.
The European Union could follow the US lead in cutting off trade benefits to Bangladesh. Washington made the move in response to conditions which have seen hundreds of workers lose their lives in a series of appalling industrial accidents. Still, the decision by the Obama administration is symbolic, as it doesn't affect exports from Bangladesh's garment industry, which isn't eligible for US duty cuts. The conditions of workers in Bangladesh's garment industry have come under scrutiny this year after the collapse of the Rana Plaza building in April left more than 1,100 people dead. A factory fire last November killed more than 100.
The European Union has welcomed Croatia as the bloc's newest member and agreed to open talks with Serbia about membership. EU President Herman Van Rompuy called it an historic moment for Croatia, a Balkan state that battled Serbia during the 1990s. Croatian Prime Minister Zoran Milanovic said he hopes EU membership will help lift the economy of his country. He also welcomed the EU leaders' decision to open membership talks with Serbia.
In Serbia, the country's Prime Minister said the EU decision means Serbia has restored its image abroad. He said the negotiations should help drive reforms in Serbia, the largest country to emerge from the former Yugoslavia.
And still to come in our news. Another suspected threat targeting the Next Media. A call for more items in daily use to be recycled. And Britain to be the first country to offer 3-parent fertility treatment. A meat cleaver was thrown out from a passenger vehicle outside the gates of the Next Media building in Cheung Kwan O Industrial Estate early this morning. It's the third time in 2 weeks that the media conglomerate has received a suspected threat, and police are investigating the case. Police collected evidence from the scene after a security guard found the 30-centimetre-long cleaver outside the company's gates at around 5:30 a.m. Surveillance camera footage showed someone dropping off the knife from a taxi while it was speeding past the area. This came 10 days after a car smashed into the gate of Next Media chairman Jimmy Lai's home on Kadoorie Avenue in Kowloon. A knife and axe were found left on the ground afterwards. And 3 days ago, a truck carrying newspapers published by Lai's company was set on fire. Yesterday, Lai said on a radio show that he believes these actions were carried out by perverted people, targeting him for advocating democratic reform through his newspaper. The July 1st protest rally has become a tradition for many Hong Kong people, with grievances to air since a decade ago. In the run-up to this year's rally, the debate is more heated than ever as groups supporting the government take action against the opposition forces. Rani Samtani has more.
Protesting isn't just for the young and energetic. This group of senior citizens also plans to join the march. This man said he is willing to bear the heat in order to fight for his right to better support from the government, which he says Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has not delivered. Although people from all walks of life air a range of grievances in the annual rally, the dominating theme this year is the push for universal suffrage. An organizer of the Occupy Central movement, which is pushing for what it calls real democracy, says most of these grievances come from a lack of government accountability.
When we have vote, when we have democracy, the government cannot just be accountable to those rich people. And he has to, or she has to, be accountable to the voters. So this is the only way that we can balance the interests of those big corporations with ordinary people.
But this year, for the first time ever, large-scale celebrations for Hong Kong's return to Chinese rule will be held at the same time as the protest rally. One of the organizers of the celebrations, the Voice of Loving Hong Kong, said it's not targeting the July 1st protest, but the Occupy Central movement because it believes the movement is against the law. The Sounds of Silence, another group that's against the Occupy Central movement, expressed the same views.
Democracy is a core value of Hong Kong, but we also have other kind of core value like law, like freedom, but we cannot trace one core value to damage another value, the law. We cannot do that in that way.
Speaking on a radio show this morning, convener of the Voice of Loving Hong Kong, Patrick Ko, said democracy may not change things because Hong Kong people lack a culture of democracy. He said the fact is, the world has always been led by an elite few holding power. Pro-democracy activists, meanwhile, disagree with the theory that the common folk should be excluded from politics.
I think Hong Kong is very ready for democracy in terms of educational level, in terms of the size of the middle class, in terms of rule of law, and also we also have a very vibrant civil society. I don't see any society when they...
Well, secondary school students took to the streets today to protest against the way the police handled them outside of Victoria Park after the June 4th vigil. They accused the police of selectively enforcing the law against them. As Joao De Silva reports, the students plan to file a complaint with the Independent Police Complaints Council.
The night of this year's June 4th vigil was a rainy one, forcing the organisers to cut the yearly event short despite the large turnout. Because of the rain, young activists from the Scholarism group cancelled their plan to hold academic exchange activities after the vigil and called on those gathering near their stall to leave. But just as this was happening, the police signalled to them that their gathering may have broken the law. Now they accuse the police of selectively enforcing the law against them and of violating their human rights.
We're doing promotion on the streets, and it's not like a protest or some actions. Also expressing our opinion is really our basic human rights. So we do not apply for the letter of no objection, and either on the June 4th and on today's campaign.
They did notify the police, however, of today's protest march from Southern Playground to the police headquarters in Wan Chai. As a reply, they got a letter of no objection from the police, a letter which they symbolically mailed back to the sender because they say they don't need police permission to voice their opinions publicly. Students say they sought legal advice and prepared a complaint against the police, which they will submit to the Independent Police Complaints Council sometime next week. Juan da Silva, TVB News.
As Hong Kong struggles to manage its mountains of waste, many have asked why the government doesn't just push for more recycling. There's one thing that's not commonly recycled, but can be when no longer in use. And most people probably have several such items left useless at home.
Electronic devices, appliances, most homes are filled with them, and many of them come with this. Yunlong District Councillor Kwong Chun-yu said he never realised he was hoarding so many. He doesn't throw charges out, not only because some broken appliances may end up getting fixed, but he also doesn't know where to throw them. Is the rubbish bin the only way to go for an old charger? An NGO advocating for its recycling says not at all. First, the cables are separated from the cell. The cables go through a crusher. Then the crushed bits go through a static separator to isolate bronze powder that's up to 99% purity. The bronze powder is then made into new cables, while the plastic bits become material for making shoe soles. And the adapted part is recycled into aluminium products. Josephine Lee of St. James Settlement said you can get $11 per kilogram for aluminium cans, while it's $4 per kilo for chargers. That's because cans just need to be flattened for recycling, while there are a few more steps in handling chargers. But chargers are definitely worth more than paper and plastics to recyclers. There's no specialised collection bin for chargers, but most recyclers will accept them, and there's no shortage. In a campaign to raise awareness, recycling groups were able to collect some 10,000 used chargers in just 6 months.
So, Tony, some pretty exciting news for us in sports.
That's right. We got tennis to start with, action from Wimbledon, and everybody, I think, in England wants to know whether Andy Murray can make it all the way to the final, actually win his first Grand Slam on Wimbledon turf. Well, he's won his first Grand Slam, but win his first Wimbledon title. Anyway, he's managed to avoid the upset bug, at least at Wimbledon. He enters the second week at the All England Club on a roll, and here's Jameson Wong.
Andy Murray says the pressure is really on now with Nadal and Federer out. Well, it didn't show as the number 2 seed beat Spain's Tommy Robredo in straight sets 2, 4, and 5 to reach the 4th round. Up next, Mikhail Yuzny or Viktor Troicki.
I mean, there's a lot more pressure on me now with them being out. And I mean, I don't read the papers and stuff, but they have papers in the locker room, so you see some of the headlines and stuff, and it's not that helpful. But yeah, you need to be professional enough to not let that stuff bother you, and just concentrate on each match. And I think I did a good job of that today.
Spain's David Ferrer, the number 4 seed, took care of fellow Spaniard Roberto Bautista Agut in 4 sets.
3-1, 6-3, 3-6, 7-6, 7-5.
But Federer's conqueror Sergei Staikovsky of Ukraine was a Wimbledon one-hit wonder, losing to Austria's Jürgen Melzer. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
On to cricket now, and ex-Pakistan captain Salman Butt said he's done wrong and wants to apologise to his countrymen and cricket fans around the world. Butt admitted publicly for the first time to spot fixing. In 2011, the 28-year-old and two other players were found guilty for their roles in a betting scam. The batsman was jailed and received a 10-year ban from the International Cricket Council, but said he wants to play for his country again and has asked for the ban to be reduced. On to athletics now, and Oscar Pistorius has resumed light training. However, his agent said the Paralympic gold medalist is not thinking about a formal return to athletics or competition. The 26-year-old is due back in court in August over the killing of his girlfriend, Reeva Steenkamp. Pistorius denies murdering her. He claims he shot Steenkamp accidentally, believing she was an intruder in his home. And disgraced cyclist Lance Armstrong is making headlines again as the Tour de France got going today on the French island of Corsica. Armstrong told a French newspaper it would have been impossible to win the race without doping at the time he was competing. He also still considers himself a 7-time champion. The American was stripped of the titles last year after a damning report by the US anti-doping agency. And this year he confessed to cheating on Oprah Winfrey's television show.
And finally for tonight, Britain is planning to become the first country in the world to offer controversial 3-parent fertility treatment. The treatments are meant for families who want to avoid passing on incurable diseases to their children. The methods, which are currently at the research stage, would involve implanting genetically modified embryos into women. Faulty DNA that can cause unwanted inherited conditions would be removed, and the child would have genes from the mother, father, and a female donor. After a national public consultation showed Britons broadly in favour of the idea, the government's health department said it will begin drafting up regulations to cover the treatments. Critics say the technique could lead to a designer baby market. Well, that would be an interesting controversy coming out from that.
We'll see how the story unfolds.
That's the news for tonight.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
It was mainly fine and very hot today, apart from cloudy periods and isolated showers. At 5 p.m., Tropical Storm Robina was centered about 370 kilometers southeast of Manila and is forecast to move northwest across the Philippines. Today's temperatures range from 28.8 to 31.6 degrees, and the current temperature is 29.9 degrees Celsius. A trace amount of rainfall has been recorded since midnight, and the very hot weather warning is now in force. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow?
Oh.
Cloudy periods overnight, mainly fine and very hot tomorrow. Temperatures will range from 29 to 33 degrees. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 15 to 65 and the pollution level will range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 10. And now here's the latest global weather update. Showers in Shanghai, cloudy in Taipei. Sunny in Guangzhou and Macau. Cloudy in Beijing, Seoul, and Tokyo.